Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a highly specific procedural breakdown of exactly how to conduct a jury trial. We're going to look at how our source documents define court jurisdiction, map out the distinct roles of court officers, and ultimately break down the absolute authority they assign to the jury itself. So let's get right into it.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll be hitting 5 key areas. Number 1, distinct legal frameworks. Number 2, identity and jurisdiction. 3 is decoding court documents. 4, the power of juries. And finally, number 5, living court procedures.
All right, starting off with Section 1, distinct legal frameworks. To really grasp these trial procedures, we have to first understand how the source material actually categorizes different types of courts.
So, according to the text, a true common law court of record fundamentally separates the roles inside the courtroom. It's kind of a complete shift from what you might traditionally expect. The magistrate, or the judge, operates strictly as an administrator. They're essentially just managing the process. The judge doesn't decide the facts, and they certainly don't decide guilt. Instead, all of that judicial discretion is held entirely by the tribunal, and in this context, the tribunal is the jury.
The sources actually draw a really sharp contrast here. On one side, you have standard statutory courts, which the text argues operate strictly under commercial contract and admiralty law, basically just existing to enforce statutes. But on the other side, you have their ideal setup, a superior common law court. This court proceeds according to common law, and its specific purpose is to protect the fundamental property rights of living souls.
Moving right along to Section 2, identity and jurisdiction. Building on that foundation we just talked about, the material introduces a very specific and highly detailed way of looking at personal identity. Now this is where it gets really interesting. In this framework, jurisdiction is determined entirely by typography. Yes, literally how a name is typed out. The text asserts that if a name is printed in upper and lower case, that represents a straw man, which operates under British territorial or military law, the UCMJ. But if a name is printed in all caps, well, that represents a tin man operating under municipal or uniform commercial code. And the crucial takeaway here? According to the framework, neither of those typographic variations represents the actual living person.
So what does someone do with that information? Well, before ever setting foot in a trial, individuals are advised to establish their correct jurisdiction. They do this by filing a notice of special appearance, explicitly claiming that 14th Amendment citizenship is totally voluntary, and formally declaring themselves exempt from interstate and international commerce. It's basically a strategy to formally assert that they fall entirely outside of standard statutory jurisdiction before the legal proceedings even begin.
Which brings us to Section 3, decoding court documents. Let's look at how these distinct definitions of identity are practically applied to actual legal paperwork.
Readers are specifically instructed not to just read court documents the normal way. Instead, they're told to hunt for puzzle pieces of jurisdiction. For example, marking up documents with handwritten notes, actively declaring fraud, and accusing the magistrate of impersonation, all based entirely on how the names and entities are capitalized on the page.
And in practice, we see this executed through handwritten responses where individuals formally claim copyright and trademark over the different capitalized variations of their own name. The source actually highlights letters accusing the court of trying to extract revenue from what they call a usufruct derivative, basically treating the name itself as protected intellectual property, claiming the court has absolutely no authorization to use it.
Okay, Section 4, the power of juries. Now that we've got the jurisdiction established, we need to talk about the ultimate authority in this system.
The historical justification for this immense authority leans very heavily on a quote from way back in 1794 from Chief Justice John Jay. The source material uses this exact historical instruction to argue that juries possess the absolute, fundamental right to judge not just the facts of a specific case, but the law itself. This really sets the stage for their entire concept of jury nullification.
In this methodology, the jury isn't just a part of the process. They are the sole tribunal authority. They operate under the belief that the voice of the people is the voice of God. So, what does that mean in real terms? It means a jury could completely agree that an accused person committed the physical act in question. But if that jury decides the underlying statute is unjust or maybe a violation of property rights, they are fully empowered to just disagree with the law and completely nullify it.
And that leads us to Section 5, living court procedures. Let's break down the actual execution phase and look at how a trial is conducted under these specific rules. The courtroom protocol here is incredibly strict and very specific. Participants are explicitly instructed to treat the judge purely as an administrator, nothing more. They're told to remain outside the bar area in the gallery, to verbally state that they will not cross that bar, and, get this, that there is absolutely no need to stand when the judge enters the room. They're also encouraged to bring along a counselor at law and as many witnesses as possible to back them up.
Let's map out how the evidentiary hearing actually flows. It's a highly structured three-step process. First up, the claimant presents recorded facts establishing the who, what, when, and where of the trespass. Second, the witnesses provide their testimony. And finally, the accused is called upon to explain their actions or lack thereof. And remember, throughout this entire process, the justice is merely facilitating. They let the jury and the parties ask clarifying questions, but they never ever rule on the evidence themselves.
Once all that evidence is on the table, we move to deliberation. The jury gathers in a separate room, and the very first thing they do is hold a vote to elect a jury lead who is tasked with keeping order. They also assign a dedicated bondsman. This person is the jury's single point of contact, making sure they have secure access to evidence and screen shares. From there, the discussion focuses heavily on two main questions. Did actual harm occur, and should the jury issue an order or a full nullification?
To wrap up the process, the jury verifies that they've reached a unanimous decision. They head back into the courtroom, and the jury lead hands the written findings over to the justice. And the justice's final role? It's simply to read that decision into the record out loud. It's a process they call pronouncement. Whatever the jury decides, whether it's a final order or a nullification, stands as the ultimate unquestionable resolution.
By visualizing these courtroom protocols and the sheer authority placed in the hands of the jurors, we get a really clear, direct understanding of how these source documents instruct individuals to navigate the justice system. We'll leave you with this foundational principle straight from the text. A properly conducted jury trial depends upon due process, evidence, impartial jurors, and accurate records. But it certainly leaves us with a compelling question. When the jury holds the absolute power to judge both the facts and the law, who truly holds the final scales of justice?